Hiya there folks, welcome to Boating on a Budget with me, the tight Yorkshireman.
And me, Dawn.
This week, Dawn, we are talking about boating on a budget.
We are.
Which is, right from the very beginning of our channel, what we've been known as.
It is,
boating on a budget. And what we quite often get asked in videos and when we meet people out and about is, how expensive is it to live on a narrowboat? And there is clearly no figure you can say it costs X amount to live on a boat.
No.
But what we're going to do on this video is run through some of our costings and what we've found and just have a look, see whether it is possible to go boating on a budget.
Yes.
I think when you're looking at buying a boat, there's sort of three main things that you need to look at for costings, isn't there? There's in effect the actual cost of buying the boat in the first place.
Yeah.
How are you going to afford to buy the boat? Are you going to have to get a loan? Can you buy a cheaper boat and do it up? You know, the few different things like that. You need to look at mooring it. Are you going to have a mooring? In which case, obviously, there's a cost involved with mooring the boat.
Yeah.
Or are you going to go what's known as continuous cruising, CCing, which means you don't have a mooring, but you do have to travel around the network.
Yeah.
Obviously, what you're potentially saving on the mooring, you're spending on the continuous cruising, moving around.
Yeah, of course.
We'll look at the details of that shortly. And also, there are certain fixed costs that you can't do anything about that you need to look at, which is things like your licence and your insurance, some of which is related to the size of the boat, some of which is just a flat fee, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
The next lot of things you have to look at are your kind of weekly running costs, if you like.
Yeah. What
sort of budget are you going to need to actually be able to live on the boat from day to day, week to week?
You do need a budget, don't you?
Yeah,
you
know,
you do anyway.
Keeping your belly full and enough drink down you.
That's coffee, by the way.
I was going to say coffee, not necessarily beer. Obviously, from that point of view, you perhaps do need to make sure you've looked at the budgeting correctly and you can actually live comfortably on the amount of money that you think you're going to be able to live on.
Yeah.
We are going to break that down quite a bit, aren't we?
Yeah.
And look at just exactly what we budget for and how we manage to live on that
it's
budget.
our budget.
Exactly. Everybody's budget is different. Yeah. We are boating on a budget then. The final group of costings is what I would kind of class as regular costings. The things that are going to come up from time to time. Again, some of them you can't really sort of negotiate on.
No.
They are just figures that you need to pay out.
Yeah.
There's things such as getting the boat blacked, which is where we have to take the boat out of the water and protect the bottom of the hull. That's something you have to do from time to time. Things like your batteries wear out. We need boat safety certificate on the boat. That's about the equivalent of your MOT on your car.
Yeah.
There's, again, things like your insurance, your licence, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they're the things that you have to pay out on a regular basis, but not necessarily every week.
No.
It might be every sort of couple of years it needs paying out, but for the longer term,
budgeting for, don't it?
You need to either be putting that money aside or at least having a plan for how you're going to pay it when it comes up. So that's those sort of three main sections: the buying of the boat, the weekly costs, and the regular costs that are going to crop up from time to time. So I think we can now sort of split those down and have a look at each one individually, just look at how we spend it and what we spend on those things. People can then relate to potentially whether they will be able to do the same.
Yeah.
So when it comes to buying a boat, there's obviously a few options. Ideally, you just have a big wad of cash and you just go and buy a boat outright.
We didn't do that.
No, and there's not really many people that are going to have a big wad of cash to be able to do that. The closest most people might come to that is either if they've took out a loan to buy one or if they've sold a property because they're moving on board.
Yeah.
We were doing neither of those. We didn't want a loan and we weren't at the time selling any property. So we had to go down a slightly more budget route, and that was buy a cheap boat.
Yes.
As regular viewers will know, we're now on our third boat. First boat was Nuts and Volts, second boat Leander Lady, we're now on Rosalie. What we've done on each one of those boats is we bought it for the cost it was, we then spent a certain amount of money on it doing it up, and then sold it for that basic amount.
Yes.
So we didn't make any profit on it, but we didn't lose any money on it.
Savings club.
Yes, it worked a bit like a savings club.
Yeah.
I said, the time and effort we put into the boats, you'll never get back.
No.
You know, I mean, especially Leander Lady, we spent hundreds, probably even thousands of hours doing that boat. You're never going to get that time back in terms of money. But the money that we paid for the boat and spent on it, we got back at the end of it. Yeah. So as Dawn says, it was a bit of a savings club. Instead of waiting, say, 3 years and putting X amount of pounds into the bank every month to save up for a boat, we bought the cheap boat, put that X amount of pounds into the boat each month,
sold it for that amount, moved on.
We've then been able to trade up. We're now on boat number 3.
Yes.
It's worked well for us because we're both quite handy.
I don't mind a bit of hard work.
Yeah, it perhaps wouldn't work so well doing that if you were planning on paying people to do jobs for you. Because obviously when you're paying people to do jobs for you, everything's vastly more expensive and it would therefore take a lot longer to do the process. So that option is perhaps a good one if you're kind of quite DIY minded and you don't mind getting stuck in.
Yeah.
The next big decision that every boater has to make is, are you going to be on a mooring or are you going to go continuous cruising?
Yes.
Continuous cruising is more or less what we're doing now, where you're travelling around the network. However, if you are going to do that on a regular basis, a permanent basis, you have got to be showing CRT, the Canal and River Trust who run the waterways, that you are doing what they call bona fide travel. So you're not just dodging backwards and forwards from point A to point B to point C, back to B, back to A.
Yeah, you can't just bunny off around.
No, what you're supposed to be doing is travelling around the network. Not necessarily the whole network, but you are genuinely travelling around the network. Yeah. Which is perfect if you're either retired or you've got no work commitments or family commitments and you can just go where you want. But obviously if you've got a fixed place of work or you've got family in a certain area you want to stay close to, it's not really an option. So therefore you then have to get a mooring. The mooring fees then come into play, unfortunately.
Yes.
But equally, what you pay on the mooring fees, you're saving on the fact that you're not necessarily moving the boat all the time, so there's less wear and tear on your engine, less diesel costs and things like that. It's something that you have to basically balance out. Which is the option for you? Do you need a mooring? Do you need to be CCing?
Yeah.
CCing is the best option, in my humble opinion.
Yes.
But we can't do it. We've managed to do it for this summer, but it's not an option for us for a long term.
Been a privilege, hasn't it?
Certainly has. In a little while we'll look at some of the figures, but you also are going to need a licence for the boat to be on the water, and that simply is the licence you get from CRT for your boat is for it to be on the water.
Yes, nothing else.
Nothing else. Basically all they are doing is saying your boat can be on the water, but you've got to have that, as well as you've got to have insurance and you've got to have your boat covered by the boat safety certificate, which as we mentioned he's doing every 4 years.
Yeah.
So these are things that you need to look at before even buying the boat to make sure you're aware of how much those are going to be and make sure you can cover those costs as you go along.
Yeah.
The next step you then need to look at is your weekly or monthly outgoings for things like your shopping and stuff like that. When we bought this boat at the beginning of December, our plan was just to kind of get it back to our mooring as quick as possible.
Yes.
You know, sort of at weekends coming down, bunny hopping the car or the van, along with the boat back home, get it back, sorted. But then we kind of had the idea of, could we turn it into the adventure that we're doing? You know, not just race the boat back, could we enjoy it? So what we had to do is sit down and get our pen and paper out and work out some costings. And the long and short of it was we couldn't afford to do it. But so here we are anyway.
Did it anyway.
But no, so what we did is we worked out, and in effect what we kind of said was, we reckoned if we were going to have to give up our jobs to be able to do this, which we would have to, we could afford about £5,000, couldn't we? It took a bit of scratching of heads and things like that, but we basically said, right, we could get together £5,000. What we immediately then said was, right, well, if we're going to do this trip, put £1,000 of that in like the slush fund, mainly for the boat. There's always bits and bobs. We're going to need to service the boat. There's always going to be a bit of something going wrong or whatever. So immediately out of that £5,000, £1,000 gone.
Went in the boat fund.
Yeah, boat fund out the way. That left us, obviously, with £4,000. We then had a workout on the calendar that we reckon for the time that we could be out. So we want to be back on our mooring by about mid-August, because we're due to be grandparents early September, so we want to be back for that. That was about a 16-week window that we could be out for.
Yes.
So a quick bit of maths, £4,000 divided by 16 weeks left us a budget of about £210.
£210-ish.
So that's £210 a week to spend. Obviously, straight away, some people will say, well, that's loads of money. Others will say, well, I'll spend that on a good night out.
I know.
Which I think in the past we probably have. But
probably have.
We kind of said, right, well, if we've got a £210 a week budget, first off, do we think we could live on that? And we kind of thought, we could get away with that. Because the option was, if we started the trip and we're spending too much money, either we then needed to get a job while we're out and about, and that kind of defeats the object of doing it.
Yes.
Or we would obviously have to cut the journey short, just get our way home.
Just get home then.
So we were looking at how can we spend £210 a week and live comfortably.
Yeah.
I think this is the crucial bit. We didn't want to be just eating dry bread and not going out every day, did we?
No.
We wanted to be able to enjoy it, including things like that chippy tea we had last night.
Yes.
That were really nice. Apart from the fact we got to the chippy last off because we'd been in the pub, another little treat we'd had.
Bank holiday.
Bank holiday treat. By the time we got to the pub, they were to the chippy, they were literally just closing, weren't they? And all they got left were some pies and things, so we couldn't actually have a fish. Anyway, I digress. I said I weren't going to waffle, and I am doing.
All those waffles. Carry on.
So we've got £210 a week. So I think the other day, once we've been shopping, you did a little bit of a cooking spree, didn't you, that was going to set us up. So if you have a quick look at this, it kind of gives you an idea as to how we're making that £210 work.
Yes.
Tonight's meal then is pasta. Exactly what's going to be in the pasta dough.
Chicken and mushroom.
Chicken and mushroom pasta. Are you doing it as like a pasta bake then, or just as a
Just a creamy pasta sauce. It'll all go in, pasta will cook. It'll all then go in one pot, served with homemade garlic bread.
Nice. And while Dawn's preparing it, I've got the list of ingredients and prices here. And I think I can identify them well enough to say, mushrooms, they were £1.19, but you reckon you'll only use about a third of those for this, won't you? So in effect, that's about 39 pence worth of mushrooms going into this. We've got a soft cheese, which was 85 pence. We've got onions, which were £1.49, but again, we're only using about a third of what was in the onions, so that's about 50 pence worth of onions. We've got some cheese. How expensive is cheese, Dawn?
Very expensive.
I think out of our trip out on the boat so far, the most startling thing for me has been how expensive cheese is.
That's something the same.
It's mad. How can cheese be so expensive? But that was £2.49 for the cheese, and you reckon you'll use about a quarter of that in this menu. So
it's enough to dust.
Yeah, just a dusting on top. So that's about 74 pence worth of cheese we're going to use. Pasta. The bag of pasta was 41 pence, using about half a bag of pasta, so about 20 pence worth of actual pasta. The flatbreads that you're going to turn into kind of a garlicky bread, aren't you? £1.49, but we'll only actually use half of those for tonight's meal. So that's about 75 pence worth. And then we've got cream, which was 99p. And the piece de resistance, the chicken, which was £1.99.
You don't have to buy pre-cooked chicken. Any leftover chicken would make it just as cheap, or whatever meat you want to put in
whatever meat or filling, doesn't even have to be meat, does it? You know, anything that you want to put in there.
No.
You will also be using a few little bits out of the pantry if you like, salt, pepper,
garlic,
touch of butter. But in essence, that means working it out. The meal that you're going to cook up there is going to cost about £6.14.
Yes.
And that's actually going to do 2 meals, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to do our main meal tonight, so like our main tea, as we call it round here in Yorkshire. Some people call it evening meal, you know, them posh ones. But yeah, so basically it'll do a main meal of a tea tonight, and then it will do also kind of a dinner time meal, perhaps tomorrow or the day after. Yeah. So more of a snacky meal. When you come to do the daytime meal, that might just incur a little more cost because you might want to use another flatbread or something like that, a bit of bread with it. But in essence, we're getting 2 meals for £6.14.
We are.
And at that, it's a good hearty meal. You can see there's plenty of good ingredients in there.
Yeah.
We're obviously not using top brand named stuff.
No.
But it's all stuff we've had in the past, and it all tastes and does exactly what it needs to do.
Yeah.
So the £6.14, 2 meals, hearty meals, nice and filling. What more can you ask for? Hopefully, as you can see from that then, we are living a comfortable life with it.
Oh, definitely.
As we mentioned earlier, we've been to the pubs, you know, we have chippy tea occasionally. The other night we had a barbecue.
Yes.
Great to have a barbecue. And I think we worked out the actual barbecue meal cost us just over £5 as well, didn't we? You know, it was the meat, I think we had belly pork, some potatoes, cauliflower cheese. Cost just over £5, and again, a bit like the pasta meal that you'd done, there was some left over, so
it went to the next
that went on to the next day. Just like actually in the day where we'd had the barbecue, we actually had the pasta for dinner in the first place.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
So, you know, we're kind of making sure we eat properly, drink properly, but we are managing to stick to that budget. Yeah. There's been odd weeks we've gone a bit over budget, there's been a few weeks where we've been a little bit under budget, but we are more or less managing to stick to the £210.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say as well, out of that £210, we are taking things like, if we need diesel for the boat for moving about, that comes out of that. If we need a gas bottle, if we need coal, obviously as it works out, we're in the middle of summer, allegedly, although it is raining outside. So we're not really having to buy any coal or anything for the log burner, but at the very beginning of the trip, we did have to get a couple of bags of coal off the fuel boat. So we are kind of taking things like that out, the £210. What we're not having to take out of that, and we worked out beforehand, is we don't need to buy any clothes. No, you don't need any new clothes. You don't need any new shoes. You don't need any new handbags. You've been put on the naughty step for things like that. But no, I mean, we basically did look and we said, you know, we're all right for clothes, we're all right for shoes, things like that. So on these few weeks, we are only really having to do the day-to-day stuff, not looking at more the longer term of keeping ourselves fit in the longer term. But I think to summarise with that, £210 a week, and whether you're looking at that saying, well, that's loads of money or that's next to nothing, is doing the job fine, isn't it? We are living that nice, comfortable life.
Very comfortable.
We're enjoying the trip. It's not spoiling anything. We're not kind of just sitting inside thinking, well, we can't afford to go out, so let's just sit here and argue.
No. We don't argue.
Yes, we do. Moving on then to that third category, which is your regular costs that, like I say, a lot of these, it's just a fixed cost. You can't really do anything about it. You've just got to suck it up basically and pay it when it comes along. As we briefly mentioned earlier, you have to get the boat out and have it blacked every 2 to 3 years. So that involves hiring a dry dock, taking the boat out of the water, cleaning it down, putting the bitumen paint on. I'll put a link in the description below to a video we did a couple of years ago on Leander Lady of doing that. But that's something that needs doing. Roughly speaking, I mean, we kind of said we budget for £1,000 each time we do it, because you need the cost of the dry dock, the cost of the paint that you're putting on, plus if there's anything like anodes and things that need adding to the boat. So you kind of really need to budget about £1,000.
Whether you're doing it yourself, whether you're paying somebody else to do it.
Yeah, you can pay somebody to do it. Again, doing it on a budget, we did it ourselves. But obviously if you're paying £1,000, that's then spread out over the sort of 2 to 3 years, so roughly £300 to £500 per year you have to kind of budget that you're going to need to pay in the longer term. There are other things, again, we briefly mentioned earlier, things like your batteries don't last forever. They've got a 3 to 5 year lifespan on them. Just general like water pumps and things like that. Just like in any house or a car or anything, things wear out. You're always going to have to be paying
maintenance
bits and bobs along the way. Boat safety certificate is done every 4 years on a boat. So like I said, that's more or less the equivalent of an MOT. However, that's not looking at things like how good your hull is or anything like that. That will be a separate survey if you want one of those doing. The boat safety is things like making sure your gas systems are up to spec and your electric systems are up to spec, things like that.
Make sure the boat on the inside is safe.
More or less looking at, if you like, your own personal safety. Making sure that the boat's safe to be in. I think the last time we had one done, it was about £150. And it lasts, like I say, 4 years you have to have it done. Plus, obviously, there's any costs involved if things need doing that the inspection picks up on. So that, again, is a cost that there's nothing you can do about that. You've got to have a boat safety certificate as well as your insurance to be able to actually get your licence to be able to be on the waterways in the first place. Talking of insurance, our insurance is only third-party insurance, which means if there's any damage occurs to the boat by us, we go and crash it or something, then obviously we have to stand to that costings. The insurance doesn't cover it.
No.
To get fully comp insurance, we would have to have the boat out the water and a survey done. Once the insurance company is then happy that the boat is in a insurable condition, they would then provide us with fully comp insurance, obviously at a higher cost. Our third party insurance is actually only just short of about £100, which I were amazed at, to be honest, when we first bought a boat. And I think Dawn found up for the insurance quote and she came off the phone, and I think at the time it was like £78.
Yeah, it were.
She's like, it's £78 for the insurance. I was like, what, a month? She was like, no, that's for the year.
No, I've paid it.
So I was like, for like a boat, less than £100 a month. I believe fully comp insurance is more £300-400 a month a year. But even so, to me, it's not a bad
worth
price.
Having that, isn't it?
I think when we do get the boat out of the water, we will get it surveyed and then upgrade to the fully comp insurance for peace of mind.
100%
we just can't get the fully comp insurance until we've had the survey done.
Yeah.
One crucial thing that you need is the licence for the boat. And that, as we mentioned earlier, is basically purely and simply to say the boat can be on the water.
Yes, nothing else.
Along the way, you do get things like there's taps provided where you can fill your boat up with water. There's rubbish points where you can get rid of your rubbish. There's in some areas there's showers, toilets and things you can use. However, it's a bit of a myth when people say, well, I pay my licence fee and I should be able to have a shower or I should be able to have a toilet, because when you read the terms of your licence, none of that is actually included in it.
No.
I'll not digress too much with that because it all gets a bit political as to how CRT and things are run. But in essence, you need your licence to be on the water. The licence fee is based on the length and also now the width of the boat.
Yes.
So if you're looking to boat on a budget, much as you might think, well, I can afford a long boat, you're going to be paying more each year for the licence.
Yes.
And potentially to boat on potentially on a boat and boating on a budget, it's more your regular cost that you need to look at rather than your initial purchase cost. So if the two boats are the same price, this one's a 40-foot boat, this one's a 60-foot boat, and they're basically the same price for whatever reason, if you're boating on a budget, you might still want to go for the 40-foot boat because your longer term costs are going to be cheaper than your bigger boat.
Yeah.
It's all obviously a bit of a balance. The thing with the licence fee as well is, depends on how you read the figures, and again, I'll not get too in-depth with it. Boaters as a whole only contribute around a fifth of the cost of keeping the network open. The rest comes from things like DEFRA and grants and stuff. What CRT are now having to do is increase the licence fee above inflation rates to kind of make boaters pay their way, if you like.
I would say it's definitely going to go up.
So, over the coming years, the licence fee is going to increase higher than inflation. It's something to bear in mind, again, if you're thinking, how can I afford it? Bear in mind your licence fee is going to go up, and not just with inflation, it's going to go up higher than inflation. Our licence fee for this boat is just short of £100 a month.
Yes.
Again, I don't think it's too bad value. You get the use of 2,200 miles of inland waterways, all the locks. Like I say, you get your water, your rubbish, things.
And we've had no issues, have we?
Personally, I think it's a bargain. But don't tell CRT that, because they'll put the prices up immediately.
No, I'm saying we've had no issues, have we?
No. The odd time we've needed CRT, if there's been an issue, they've been there. You know, we can't fault it.
No.
When you're looking at those options between either continuous cruising, moving around the network all the time, or having a home mooring that you're at most of the time and you just go out and travel back to all the time, there's various different ways of looking at the costings for that, because again, CRT have now started putting a surcharge on your licence if you're a CC'er.
Yes.
So if we didn't have a mooring, our licence would actually now be, I think it's 25% higher.
More, yeah.
Because we're not paying towards a mooring and we're using the system. Again, it's a bit controversial. We'll not get too in-depth.
No.
But obviously when you've got the mooring, you're paying out for that as well.
That's monthly. Every month without fail, isn't it?
And mooring costs vary hugely around the country and the network. It depends on what actual facilities you've got on the moorings, because some moorings are literally just a piece of bank that you tie to.
Yep.
There's absolutely nothing there. There's no water, there's no electric, there's no toilets, there's no nothing. Whereas other moorings, you've got all of those things. You can plug into an electric network, you've got a tap provided for you, you might have a shower block and toilets.
Yes.
So there's vast array of different options. Also, just like with housing, where you are in the country makes a massive difference on your mooring costs.
Yes.
Quite obviously, you're not going to get a mooring in London for the same price as you're going to get a mooring up north.
No.
Up north, where we are. Although we'll not go into too much depth again on our specific moorings, we're on a community mooring that's a little bit different to most moorings. Yes. We're in a collective with 12 other boaters and we sort of rent that space together. The nearest CRT mooring to us that's currently available is about £150 a month. However, I recently saw one that was available to let in London that was £600 a month, and people were fighting over it because it was such a good deal.
Yeah.
So there's obviously that vast difference. You need to personally look at where you want to be in the country and see what moorings are available and what costings they are.
That's where you want to live.
Yes. The final part of the costings that you have to bear in mind that we've kind of skipped over in our little trip out are your regular things that you would normally want to buy, such as what we touched on earlier. Things like your clothes, your shoes, going out to events. Do you want to go to a concert? Things that, life throws at you. Do you want a day at the seaside? Equally, do you want to be able to put money away to be able to go on a holiday?
Yes.
You need to look at the broader spectrum. So that £210 a week that we were mentioning earlier, obviously out of that, we're not putting anything to one side for clothes or anything. No. If we needed to buy clothes out of that, we'd perhaps have to have a night where we didn't go to a pub.
Yes.
A night where we didn't go to a pub.
Really?
But no, so obviously you do need to then look at your whole lifestyle. And this is where we say, we class ourselves as boating on a budget. We always have done. We're not vast spenders. We live a fairly simple life, but a comfortable life, and we do like to go to the pub. We do like a chippy tea now and again. We
don't miss out on anything.
No, there's
absolutely not.
There's nothing that we kind of say, oh, I'd like to do that, but I'm not doing it because I'm a tight Yorkshireman.
No. But you are.
But I am. But yeah, so they're all the kind of things that you do need to bear in mind your costings for. There's no point thinking, well, I can buy a boat, go and move on to a boat, live on a boat, but then I'm literally just going to be able to pay my bills, and then I'm going to be miserable as sin because I want to be doing other things that I then can't afford to do.
Yeah.
It is looking at your whole life structure.
You have, yeah. You've got to balance it out, haven't you?
And I think that is just like life in general anyway.
Same as living on land, brick house, whatever.
Exactly.
You have to budget, don't you?
Yeah, so I think that overall hopefully gives people an idea as to what's involved costings wise, and the sort of, like I say, I think you have to break it down into those three main categories. How are you going to buy the boat in the first place, and what sort of money can you spend on that, what you're going to get for your money. Then what you need as like your regular weekly sort of shopping bill and things like that, and then your kind of regular payments that are going to come out.
Your overheads.
Yeah, overheads. Very good way of putting it, Dawn. I like that. Your overheads. Your things that you are going to have to spend, but not necessarily you spend every week, but you've got to bear in mind, say for instance, that boat blacking's a year away. How are you going to pay for that in that sort of time? I think hopefully if people have enjoyed a little bit of an insight into our boating on a budget lifestyle.
Yes.
If you've got any questions or anything, bob them in the comments below. We'll try and answer any questions that we can, covering the actual costs and what's involved with.
If you want to lend us a tenner, we're happy for you to lend us a tenner.
Only a tenner? That's not going to get many drinks these days, Doc. But no, thanks very much for watching then, folks, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.